like to welcome you to this edition of Plymouth Profiles. And Plymouth Profiles is an opportunity to meet with people from the greater Plymouth area. Once again, we're delighted to have back as our guest, Matthew Muratore. Matt.
Good to see you, Steve.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Matt, you've just come off of having spent quite a bit of time in public service. So give us a little bit of your background, people that may not have seen in the past.
Sure. So I was born in Caribou, Maine, and grew up in the South Shore, mainly in Rockland, and became a licensed nursing home administrator in 1991, but started working in nursing homes in 1977 as a dishwasher and kind of worked my way up. So I've been in elder care my entire career. And back in the mid-2000s, soon after we moved to Plymouth, as you know, my wife Kristen worked with you, and in 2005, you were gracious enough to appoint me to the Finance Committee, which I had no idea what it was, but you explained it to me, and you pointed me to that committee here in Plymouth, and I was fortunate from that point, almost 20 years later, to, not only do that, but then become on the select board, become chair of the select board, become a state representative for 10 years, representing Plymouth, and it's been a great run the last 20 years, and it's all about, helping the community and giving back to the community, and it's been a great run. So I owe it all to you for that start.
To me, but it's all. I mean, all I can do is make the appointment. You got to run with it.
Yeah.
But
you know what it was? It was always being in the right place at the right time. You and I have talked about this before. When I ran for selectman in 2010, I had no desire. I enjoyed being on the Finance Committee. I was vice chair at the time. I enjoyed it. But it, a seat opened up, and I was vice chair of the Finance Committee. So it seemed to be the timing, and the same thing that happened when I ran for state rep. Terry Murray decided to retire, and Vinny was going to move up, so I was chair of the select board. So it's just the right place and right time.
So when you look back on your time in the select board, what do you recall as being something that you say, gee, I'm glad I was there at the time when we did that?
Without hesitation, the town hall. If you remember, that building was, I think it was the Redevelopment Authority had that building. It was an old courthouse, very much run down. And I know the county was using it for office space in the lower level, but there was a lot of mold and all that. And I remember talking with Melissa Origi at the time, the town manager, and Ken Tavares, who was on the board, and they wanted to do something with that to make it more into a town hall. And there was discussion of how to do that and how much it would cost the taxpayers to put on the tax roll. And I said, wait a minute, hold on a second. Before we jump into doing all that, why don't we meet with all these different committees? And we met with, the school committee, the planning board, the Plymouth Redevelopment Authority, the Housing Authority, in a real joint meeting. I'll never forget it. And everyone threw their ideas on the table and all that. And that's where we came up with, okay, let's redevelop this into a new town hall for the center of town. It will help build the economy downtown and have other builders come in and build it up and make it better. And but we didn't put it on the tax roll. We used that extra 0.75% of the tax the meals tax dollars to actually pay for it. And that's what's paying for it up to this day. And I bring that story up not because I was the chair and I did anything, but it was because the whole community came together. All these groups, all these committees came together and got this. That's how this idea was formed.
And it was a good decision.
It was a very good decision, yeah.
It's been a great town hall, and it's been a good place.
And it's a great focal point of the whole downtown.
What do you think about currently a board of selectmen? Have you served on it? Was it effective?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was when we were there. And one of the other things we actually did as a board back then, and this is back to 2010, we were giving out a lot of liquor license, and we got criticized for that. But what we were trying to do is to build this atmosphere downtown and the waterfront by giving out to all these different restaurants and all that. And so that's what you see to this day, what the downtown, the waterfront looks like. And I think it's going to go to the next level now with the downtown waterfront district that's in place and other things that they're going to be doing.
So you left the select board and you ran for state rep.
Yeah.
And how did that work out for you?
It worked out okay. It worked out okay.
So how long did you serve?
So I served 10 years.
Okay.
And I was so fortunate just to represent one community in the town of Plymouth. Most state reps have multiple communities they represent, but I just had Plymouth, which I knew fairly well. So I knew the players. I was able to continue to work with the players in the town, and we did a lot of good stuff, particularly, leading up to 2020. We got, working off of what Vinny DiMacedo did and Terry Murray did. We continue to get, millions of dollars for the infrastructure for the waterfront, for the downtown area to really sustain ourselves after 2020. And thank God we did, because 2020 had COVID. The parties that they call them, which they really weren't part of, those signature events never happened, but at least we had the infrastructure already put into place to continue with our growth in tourism beyond 2020.
And I'll just digress for a minute because you mentioned this. During COVID, you participated with me on a daily show. Talk to us about that.
Do you know to this day, Steve, when I'm out and about, whether it's at a restaurant or grocery shop or whatever it is, people will always bring that up. They'll say, "I remembered when you did that show, every day during COVID."
Right.
And it was amazing how many people tuned into that. But that was their way of getting, real information, timely information. And you leading that along with, Barry Pontham and other folks, it was incredible. But I did it because I felt like as a state rep, I felt useless. What can I do? What can I do to help people? There's nothing I can do. We're all had to be homebound. And then this idea came up, and it's like, all right, this is great. This is going to make me feel useful and, help people continuing as a state rep.
And truly, it was the one source for local news, along with maybe going online to the town website. So I remember at the time, people wanted to know what's happening with the school. Are they opening or meals or whatever? I mean, it was right up to the moment. And there were times you would each day give us an update on the state. And often it was breaking whatever the new protocols were breaking right as we were coming on air.
We were getting briefings almost every day as state legislators from the governor. And usually they're in the morning. So, and we were on usually at noontime. So I was able to bring some of that information before it got out to the public. But I think, it shows the power of what PAC TV can actually do. And I think it showed that the access stations around the Commonwealth are so useful to our communities because the whole general news organizations that are out there now, people don't know what to trust and what to believe. But at least you're going to get your local people that you know and trust and get trusted information.
So, Matt, tell us a little bit about what you would say first is a hallmark of being a good state representative.
I think it's working with, first of all, don't take yourself so seriously.
That's true with probably any elected official.
Yeah, it really is. And don't have we all kind of have egos, but you can't have a strong ego in this game because it's not about you. It's about the seat that you're filling for now, but it's about working with your community. I always joked and said I'm the sixth member of the select board because I was extension of them and what they and the town manager wanted to be done for the town. I would have people come up to me and say, "Hey, can you make this change for the town and do this?" I said, "Well, as long as the select board goes along with it, if they approve it, that's fine. Then I'll work with the state to help them out with XYZ, whatever that is." So I think that's really the key is, kind of keep in the background as much as possible, but really help the communities move forward.
So the state law on remote participation for open town meetings is expiring. We're taping this at the end of February. It's expiring next month. And I've been involved as part of the Mass Muratore Association for helping other communities who are bringing home rule petitions. But you were instrumental, talking about being the sixth member of the Board of Selectmen, you were instrumental in several efforts that we had at the state level to have remote participation and then ultimately hybrid. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so that was something that you and the board and others have brought up that, we want to have this hybrid town meeting. And, it had been brought up in the past through legislation that never passed. And again, I think it was the timing of this too for the town of Plymouth that we said, okay, let's just look at our own community. And so looking at the town of Plymouth, and the way I sold it to my colleagues and the people, the leadership is, let's do it as a pilot. Let's see how it works out. And it's worked out, very well, with your leadership. And it's so much so that we actually had the town of Brookline come and, one of them 2 or 3 years ago, I forget how long ago it was, they came and watched because they wanted to do it. They had tried to do it, but it failed. But more and more have obviously done it, and it's been successful here, and it works well. I know some of the town meeting members, didn't like it initially, but it gives them an option, particularly if for some reason they're sick now and they can't come to town meeting, but they can still participate. And that's the point, is about the participation.
I think that the average person in the town, even me as an elected official for so many years, don't fully appreciate the role that you can play as a state representative for such legislation. Because now, as I'm working with some other communities who are trying to mirror what we're doing, they're asking that our legislative delegation be supportive, because the legislative delegation understands the hybrid. We're the only ones in the Commonwealth. And they're also talking about how they need their state reps to stand up to the plate. I remember once going to Boston, to the State House, and testifying in a hearing. But again, the process, I don't think people fully understand. Maybe talk to us a little bit about what is a home rule petition and what has to be done in order for the town of Plymouth to get heard by the state.
Yeah. So it all starts, again, with the community. It starts with the town. It starts with the Board of Selectmen for, creating whatever needs to go on the warrant. And then really it's town meeting to approve a warrant to bring it for a home rule petition. And then our job as state legislators is to bring it to the legislature, get it through committee, and then get it to the House floor for a vote. And I take that very seriously, particularly because, town meeting is something town meeting wants. It's something we just never would let go of. We keep following up on and keep making the arguments for it. And it's all about relationship building as well. I remember, Vinny and Terry both telling me they were great role models for our legislature in this area. He was a Republican, she was a Democrat, but they worked so well together. And it was about what's best for the community. And they all built relationships with their colleagues across the aisle. And that's what I continue to do as well. And I think that makes a big difference.
Well, and talk to us about that too, because what we're seeing certainly on local regional news that brings in the national news is we're seeing that, at least at the national level, it doesn't seem as though there's bipartisan efforts on very many matters. Maybe occasionally you get it, but not usually. So what is your philosophy as an elected state official working across the aisle?
I think people who are tired of not seeing action in Washington, and that's something here in Massachusetts that we can't get into that. We have to be able to control what we control and work for the best of the people in Massachusetts, and particularly our communities. It doesn't mean that we agree all the time. Kathleen Natra and I shared Plymouth, as you know. And when it came to voting on things, sometimes we would vote differently on whatever the subject, whether it's guns or whatever it is. But when it came to the community, we would come together. And that's what people saw. They saw us together. They saw us working for the community. They saw us getting funding for the community. That's what people are interested in, how it's going to affect them in their hometown. And that's something I never forgot. I never let go of that and made sure that was always a focal point.
So let's talk about some of the things you recall during your 10 years. What are some of the legislation of which you're most proud?
I think one of the reasons I ran, a couple of reasons. One, as a nursing home administrator, elder services, elder care was very big to me. And how do we affect change in the elder care arena? How can we get people to age in place, wherever that's going to be, whether it's a nursing home, assisted living, their own home? And we did a major nursing home bill, long-term care bill 2 or 3 years ago. And although I was not on the committee, I was asked to actually work with the committee on drafting the regulations for that. Very proud of that. And again, one of the reasons I ran. Another one had to do with mental health too. As you know, I have an older daughter that struggles with mental health, and so we actually finally passed some legislation, I think 3 or 4 years ago, with regard to mental health and access to mental health and costs, and try to get more people, more jobs, more people employed in the mental health field, the behavioral health field, by tuition reimbursement and things like that. So we're starting to see the effects of that, having more beds available if needed. We're starting to see the effects of it, but it'll continue to come over the next 5 to 6 years, I think.
Good. As you wound up your tenure as state representative, you decided to move on. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I think the voters decided me to move on. I decided.
But you decided to move on from state rep.
Yeah. And I thought of it long and hard. And, I had a lot of colleagues and people in Plymouth and friends like, why not just run for state rep again? Why are you doing this? Why you want to go? But I truly believe in a balance of power. I think, and Massachusetts will never become Republican, but the more you have it, and I saw it with the 8 years with Governor Baker as the Republican governor in Massachusetts, I saw over the 8 years how well things worked. And I was spoiled that way because that's all I knew. You have a Democratic leadership in the House and the Senate, and you had a Republican governor, and they worked so well together. They met every Monday at 2 o'clock and worked things out and got things done, and we were getting things done. And then when you had the Democratic governor and the Democratic leadership, I started seeing it's not really happening. And for whatever reason that is, whether it's a struggle of power between the higher-ups in the Democratic Party or what it is, it just wasn't. So I said, I think I want to take the chance and try to run for, at the time it was going to be an open seat. Sue Moran decided she wasn't going to run for election. I said, it's a good opportunity. And, we only had three Republicans in the Senate at the time that were Republican. And I said, well, if I could be one of them, we looked at it. We said, what's our chances? And we did all the work. It's all a numbers game. We worked the numbers in this area. Like, yeah, we could probably, 51, 49 if we did this and we did that. And so, I decided in January of 2024 to take the leap. And it didn't work out. We came close.
Yeah.
We came close. And, people, it really came down to Falmouth. I mean, Falmouth, we need to get, closer to 40%. We got 35%. Everywhere else fell into place where we thought. But, people thought we did very well. I've had people to approach me, hey, you going to run again? Or, why don't you run for lieutenant governor this time? You did really well down this way. And we need somebody from the South Shore, South Coast, Cape area that could really, possibly win as lieutenant governor. I said, I'll think about it. I don't know. But again, going back to what I said earlier, it has to be the right place and right time. I never want to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
It never works out. I don't think it ever works out when you do that.
When you ran for state senate, what were the issues that seemed to be most concerning to voters?
It's funny. It really didn't come down to issues so much. I mean, you could talk about guns and immigration, and you talk about those issues. But what people really wanted to talk about is who are you going to vote for? Who are you going to vote for president? And I remember being in a it was actually on Sandwich TV. It was a debate we had, and they opened it up to the audience that was there for questions. The first question was, well, who are you going to vote for? And I looked at the woman, and I looked next to Dylan, who was next to her. I said, I assume you're talking to me because you know who's got to vote for, right? And I said, I said, this race isn't about who I'm going to vote for president. It's about what I can do for this. And she kept hammering on that. I said, why is that so important, who I'm going to vote for? She goes, because it goes to your character. I said, ma'am, I'm so sorry, but you don't know who I am. And I started explaining who I was. I'm first and foremost, a father of 6 daughters, a husband to a wife who was an elder care attorney, spending my whole background. That doesn't define who I am by who I vote for. And I thought, that was the turning point for me where I thought, boy, people are just, they don't see the bigger picture. And I think we've really gotten away over the last decade or so about being able to sit and have conversations of who do you want to vote for president? Who am I going to vote for president? And respect that and walk away. Now it's got to the point where people define you because of that. And I hope it's starting to turn where people can actually talk about politics a little bit more without people getting upset. Respect people's opinions.
Yeah, and it's true at the local level. I just coincidentally got a form to fill out as an elected town official. And one of the questions was, what's your party affiliation? And I filled it out. I don't know if it's going to get kicked back. I put not applicable, because even though I have a party affiliation, it isn't relevant when you're running for office in the town, because
Right.
we don't do that.
Right.
And I think it's very important for people to get away from that at the town level, certainly, and just focus on, as
Go
you
to
would
the
say,
job.
the person and the job they could.
Yeah,
So-
that's really, and I did find though in running through the 8 towns is that people are more apt to look at, and particularly our generation more so, and the younger generation, looking at the person more than the party. So that was kind of encouraging to see that, because I had a number of people say, well, you're a Republican, but, I'm a Democrat. But, I like what you have to say. I like what you had to do. I'm going to vote for you. And I think that's the way it should be. My fear is that maybe for the next generation or so, we may lose that whole Democrat and Republican Party, and something else may form over time. But both parties are struggling,
Right.
particularly nationally.
Right.
What's going to happen? And we got to stop butting heads with each other and figure out how we can all work together.
So since the election, what have you been doing?
So I have a company called EF Senior Care. It's a senior living company that I formed with 3 other business partners, Patrick Flaherty and Bob Eidenstein, as you know. We're part of that back in 2018. And we do consulting for nursing homes and assisted livings and rest homes. We now do management contracts with them as well, just in Massachusetts. We own a couple of nursing homes now and assisted living. And so I was doing a little bit behind the scenes with that, not a lot. But now that I'm fully available, I'm doing more business development and client relations and, getting more involved in the business and the industry. So, I'm loving it. As you could tell from maybe my tan, I've been away. I was just telling Melissa here that I was actually been away. This is the end of February, so I've been away more than I've been home in Plymouth the last 2 months, which has been kind of nice because of the way my schedule has been for the last 20 years. I haven't had the opportunity to do that. So
that is nice.
Yeah.
So we're taping this on a day when you're having a gathering later in the day. So what are your future plans?
I don't know, Steve. I'm loving what I'm doing in the private sector right now. I'm going to continue doing that this year. But the one thing that I thought about it, and when I lost in November, I said, you know what, I think that's it. I've always said I lose once, I'm done. But then I had more people come to me and talk to me again about maybe running for state senate again, maybe running for lieutenant governor. Just keep thinking about it. I thought about it over the holidays, and I finally said, you know what? I got a small team together. I said, what if we did, like a thank you? A thank you and, looking forward to 2026 type of event. So we're going to raise some money to do that. But I want to just kind of see, what kind of interest there is out there for me maybe to run for something in the future. But the biggest thing I learned, 10 months of raising funds, I raised $181,000 last year, wasn't enough. I was outspent $425,181. So if I'm going to do something next year in 2020, November 2026, which seems like a long time away, it's really not. I need to start now and start looking to see what it looks like, what the landscape will look like, what fundraising looks like, how much I can actually raise. Because 10 months wasn't enough time.
And is that level of fundraising true for all districts or just our district?
What I understand is I was told by a couple of folks that this was the most expensive state senate race ever in the history of Massachusetts. So I don't think it's that typical. I think typically I was told if you could raise somewhere around 250,000, you should be good. But again, we didn't get to that point either. Could we have? Would it have made a difference if we raised another 20 to 30 or 40,000? It could have meant the difference of a couple of different more mailers or something. You don't know. We think we did everything we had with the funds that we had. I actually put a little bit more of my own money into it myself. It was for one last mailer at the end. I don't. It's too bad it comes down to the money. It really does. It really does. But people voted, and I respect how they voted. And and in this district, it's a bridge issue, as you know. It's always on this side of the bridge. I won all the districts on this side of the bridge. He won all the districts on that side of the bridge. So that's what it comes down to.
Part it's the numbers.
Yeah, it's all numbers. Yeah.
So, what do you like to do now in your spare time?
Well, again, we've just been traveling a lot now, so that's been a lot of fun. Our youngest is now a junior in high school, so she's 17 now. So she's getting ready to start looking at colleges, and we'll be graduating another year, and so we're pretty soon we're going to be empty nesters. We have 2 that 3 that are outside the house now, living outside the house, and 2 in college at UMass Amherst, and one grandchild. So we're enjoying her. She comes over every Saturday night with us and spends the night with us, and it's just great. Just kind of enjoying things right now.
Yeah.
Now,
and you're also still involved in local organizations. You're involved in Rotary.
Yeah, still involved with Rotary. I'm on the board of Back TV. Although I am leaving that at the end of the summer or the beginning of the summer. So a position will open up, a Plymouth position for the PAC TV board. I've been on there, I think, 7 or 8 years. I'm also in the Economic Foundation, the Plymouth Area Economic Foundation. So I'll continue my roles in that. Just got appointed to the State Commission for the Assisted Living Commission in Massachusetts through Minority Leader Brad Jones. And there's a rest home commission that's looking at regulatory requirements as well. So I just got appointed to that as well. So I'll still be involved in the state level as well as the local level for now.
Yeah. I just had the experience through this week of trying to have a client's father placed out of Beth Israel Deaconess in Plymouth Hospital into a skilled nursing facility. They made over 200 referrals before they finally had a bed.
It's hard. It's hard. And that's the problem in long-term care now. There's an option for nursing homes. There's an option for assisted living. One is, mass health. One is very private pay, but that whole in-between part is missing. And that's what these commissions are going to look at it. How do we form this continuing care for seniors for the next generation?
And there's such a need.
Absolutely need, yeah.
So, Matt, if people joined us partway through, what would be the one takeaway you'd want them to get from this presentation?
Well, I'd ask them to go look at the whole thing again. No, I just want to thank the people of Plymouth and the elected officials. And I know you couldn't make it, but the January 14th, the town did a great honor and so unexpected. And there were so many speakers. They named January 14th, Matt Muratore Day in Plymouth. It was so overwhelming. It was so kind, but that's not the reason, why I did it. We do it to give back to the community. Kristen, does community work as well. We give back to the community so we can show our kids. It's about giving back to your community when you can.
Matthew Muratore, thank you very much for being here.
Appreciate it.
That completes this portion of today's presentation, but please stay tuned. We have another 30 minutes, and we hope you will join us with our next guest. Thank you. Welcome back to this portion of Plymouth Profiles. And before we begin with our next guest, I'd like to take a moment to thank those who are supporting us here at the local scene. We have Dan Snyder and Tom Bolus in the control room. And here in studio behind the cameras, we have Melissa Mattenzi. So thank you to them and to everyone here at Local Scene who have been so helpful over the years in supporting Plymouth Profiles. And for this portion of our presentation, we welcome another guest, first time, and it is Nancy Muckle. She's the CEO and founder of Problem Solved. Welcome, Nancy.
Good to be here.
Thank you for coming.
My
so,
pleasure.
Nancy, for people who may not have met you before, give us a little bit of your background. Where did you grow up? Where do you live now?
Sure.
What have you done?
So I've done a lot. Midwestern gal from Ohio. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, where my family lives, many of them still, including my son. And I went to college at Miami University, Miami in Oxford, Ohio, which is a wonderful, wonderful school. In fact, we have 3 generations there now. My husband, my son went there, and now my grandson goes there. He's a junior, so that's pretty exciting. Moved around the country quite a bit. I started out as a teacher in south of LA in Costa Mesa. I taught high school English, speech, and journalism. And I got double major, education and English, and eventually wanted to get into business. And it was an interesting time because, like everything, it's networking and connections and getting support. And I wound up working for a company named Digital Equipment Corporation, which most people know of that in this area. And I was hired. I didn't have a computer background. They said, you have what's needed, we think, for business. We'll teach you the computers. And so I began in a training program, and eventually in a couple of months, they said, we're moving you right into sales because we just lost somebody who was going to work with you. So anyway, I jumped into sales, spent 5 years there, moved into management after 9 months. They always gave me the entrepreneurial projects. Very interesting mini computer company. Main competitor was Wang and IBM on the mainframe side. So I learned computers, basically had, once I got into management, they gave me several projects. One of the most interesting was to bring a product called All-in-One, which was software, to the market. And they gave me a $9 million budget, and we wound up doing $40 million. So that kind of blew it out and helped me. And so they gave me a lot of interesting opportunities. And then eventually I moved to Merrimack, New Hampshire, not moved, but traveled there every day to run the Small Business System Computer Group. And then I really decided after 5 years I wanted to kind of spread my wings. So I wound up going to work for an early stage company out of San Francisco. And there were 4 of us hired. We all had 50,000 square foot distribution centers. Mine was in Hopkinton. And basically, we formed a company. We started off in the office products arena. We took a business, combined, 4 of us, from 0 to 60 million in 2 years. We thought we'd all be lying on the beach. But the parent company, which was about a 100-year-old company called Crown Zellerbach, basically spun off our company to a catalog company. And those of us who were vice presidents running fairly large businesses left. And then 3 of my colleagues went to Apple. And they called me one day and they said, "We want you. Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere in the country." And I wanted to go to Florida because my parents wintered in South Florida. So I went there. I got into a business that was a turnaround business. It was doing 20 million, and in 2 years we moved it to 60 million. So the key to that success is kind of life, I think. It's trying to find out with individuals that work with you and under you, what are their goals? What are they trying to accomplish? And put together plans to help them be successful. And if done correctly, which we did, everybody achieved in a year where they wanted to go. And we basically went from last place to first place and grew the business dramatically. So I spent several years there. I built $1 million facility in Fort Lauderdale, and then Citrix found me, Citrix Software, one of the largest software companies today in the world. And I was basically asked to work there. I ran half the country and had a great experience there. And then we moved back to New England, and that was the time I just started to have my own company.
And when you went back to New England, was it to Plymouth?
It actually wasn't to Plymouth. What got me to Plymouth was I'm a golfer, and everything is serendipitous in life, because where we live today in the Pine Hills, that 3,000-acre development was owned by Digital, the company that hired me into the computer business. But they never did anything with the land, and of course it was acquired and built into a lovely facility. So that's what brought me to Plymouth.
And when was that?
That was in what was the year there? It would have been, let's see, it would have been 2000, I guess it was 2003. 2003. And then I got very involved in the town because I really wanted to learn about everything. I joined Habitat for Humanity. Eventually, my husband and I were treasurers, co-treasurers, so we paid all the bills, did all of that. And then I headed the fundraising committee. I think we built 15 to 20 houses under our involvement for about 10 years. I got into the affordable housing group in committee in the city and really learned about how city government operates. And it was a phenomenal experience. And we again helped a lot of people who needed housing to find that and to build it. So that was exciting. And I launched my first company, which was called Muckle and Associates. Still exists, about 30 years of my training and whatever. Built a company that became a global company. And the purpose of that company was to actually bring companies to either Boston or New York. They could come from Europe or come out of MIT, Harvard, or one of our better schools here in the state. And we basically not only did strategies for them, but we actually opened up all their initial business to get them revenue. So they all had some funding, a couple million when we would meet them. And then we built them into entities that could get up to 50 or 75 million and really send them on their way. So that was a very successful company. I worked as mostly, they could give me whatever title, but I was working for the CEO to get into the market and get them going. From there, how I got into Problem Solved, which is where we are today, which is very exciting. Had this idea 13 years ago. I saw all these people like myself traveling every day of the week and not being at home with family and being involved in the community. And I said, there's got to be a better way. And along came COVID. And people then turned into virtual and not traveling. And I said, now's the time to leverage this and take advantage of people who have the skills to help build my team. and basically to get into the market to help people. So what we really do is we advocate for business owners and individuals. I call it game-changing advocacy who have problems. And a lot of the problems relate to money. And it could be anywhere from a couple thousand to 500,000. And what's happened, excitingly, we launched this at the Center for Active Living here in the town. I did my first talk there to talk about the company starting, and we became national in 3 years. So the company has exploded. It's really been viral. And what's made it so, I guess, accepting by the communities around the country is that everybody has problems. We all have problems, but it's trying to help people to solve those problems. And we've been very, very successful in doing that. And we have a very high, it's almost a 98% success rate. So almost everything is solved. Not everything is money related, but many, many are.
So Nancy, if people wanted to reach you, how would they do that?
So we have a website, which is www.probssolved.com. I do pro bono consulting once a month at the Center for Active Living. I made a lot of investments in the beginning, so we have all the hardware and the network and the infrastructure. We capture every call from around the country.
Is there a number to call?
There are several numbers to call. And one of them is 781-258-9050, 508-224-4464, but it's all on the website.
Okay.
And the bottom line is, I think the key is people say, well, what areas do you cover? What segments are you involved in to help people? And we're involved in 5 areas. We added a 6th just a couple years
So let's
ago.
talk about each of those. The first one in your printed material is healthcare.
Healthcare. So they could be, I've done so many interesting, and my team has done so many, we have quite a few people from the healthcare arena as experts, because the people that are on our teams are people who have expertise typically in areas, i.e. healthcare. They might have run an organization. They might have been a nurse. They might have been whatever. So what do we do in healthcare? People have a lot of billing issues with medical, and all kinds of medical treatment and hospital stays and whatever. And it's very challenging to try to get through that. We get all those problems solved. I've had people say, I had an issue at this hospital or this healthcare company. Can you get me a meeting? And we've gotten meetings with the presidents of these various large organizations, like here in, used to be Jordan Hospital, now it's Beth Israel, Kaiser Permanente, some of the well-known Cleveland Clinic around the country. So we do that. So anything related to healthcare, it's not really just in a box. It's every day we have new exciting things to attack. But the healthcare system today is challenging, and we do a good job.
Our previous guest, Matthew Muratore, was talking about elder law, elder care. It's one of the areas in which you have listed as a solution expert. And give us an example of elder care.
Elder care could be as simple as I had one in another state. I had a woman, elderly woman, who was staying at a independent/assisted living, pretty large development. It was a campus scenario. They had brought in a new director of nursing, and basically trying to get a hold of her for this client was challenging. So eventually I got a meeting after a month or so, and there was no way to email her. It was kind of crazy. It was, again, in another place. It wasn't local. And the woman said, yeah, I just haven't set up my email. And I'm thinking, you're heading up nursing. So in the end, after a lot of talking to a number of people in this community, there were problems. So what I was able to do was to go to the president of this group and talk about this woman's situation within this independent living. And eventually, this woman who came as a director of nursing, after about 6 months, was let go because she really wasn't right for the job or the opportunity. And by helping this woman who was in her 80s with some issues within this place she lived, it was all, fantastic. The family was very happy, and the woman was she was ecstatic. So that was one example.
And another area is insurance. What type of insurance?
So I just, we do every kind of insurance. I just did a $106,000 Denali truck, was a lemon. I was brought in by a law firm. We get referrals from many law firms around the country. And they said, we've been working on this. It wasn't in the beginning. They didn't go to the state. They didn't do certain things potentially that could have helped with the filings for this individual. I got involved with, turns out the truck was made by the largest U.S. automotive manufacturer. And I went to the general counsel, me personally, on this, and got involved with the right people. And we resolved this actually this week. So the individual had a lemon, and when he drove the car for just a couple months, he had to replace the engine on a brand new car, number one. Number two, he would get stuck. He would go on a trip for a couple of states. He might be in New York, and then he had to get the car towed. And anyway, just problem after problem. And finally, the dealership went out of business. It was very bizarre. It's kind of a bizarre issue, but long story, he lost a lot of money, legal fees and whatever. We got everything back, everything. So that's just one example of that type of insurance. And then also we do things like I just got 2 families in the hurricane in southwestern Florida, had everything destroyed, totally destroyed by the hurricane, by Ian. And we got them, insurance company didn't really want to pay them what they needed to be paid. And so we were able to settle both of those claims. Instead of getting $50,000, the families each got over $100,000. So the role of our company is quite unique in that we go to the top of whatever area we were trying to solve a problem, and we get involved with someone on the executive management team, and we say, we're going to give you all the facts and you can make a decision. We always throw in human interest, because life is about people and their circumstances. And in the 3 years that we've had our company, not one company, most of them are large Fortune companies, have said no. Nobody said no, because they want to help. They want to keep their customers, keep their clients. If it's healthcare, keep their patients.
Sure.
So that's another kind of insurance. So we get into very car, automobile, healthcare, a lot of different types of insurance. Even though people have agents and things, they have problems that they want some additional help with.
And on your materials, you mentioned vendors, or all kinds of vendors that really pretty much anybody that would sell to the consumer?
Home Depot, IKEA, Mercedes-Benz, I can go on. And in those situations, we've been able to, I'll give you an example. We had some clients down in Florida, and they had a contractor came in through Home Depot and ruined a floor. It was a beautiful mahogany floor. They moved some furniture, and anyway, long story, they admitted that they had made damage this floor. And so we said to the client, do you want a new floor? What do you want? Because we have to try to achieve the objectives of the client. And they said, no, we just want to get a dollar amount. And they asked for $20,000. And in the end, we got them $40,000. So it's negotiating. It's really representing people, we hope, in the best way, because customer service today, we all have dealt with it, but most of the people that answer the phone don't have financial authority to make decisions. And, many times they just kind of want to move people along, and we want to go much, beyond that.
Now, Plymouth is, of course, a very big tourism area.
It's a beautiful tour.
And you also mentioned that you help out in hospitality. Tell us about that.
COVID, people lost, as I'm sure you're aware, and I'm aware, money for travel, whether it be cruise ships, weddings, parties, bachelor parties, whatever. People lost money in terms of hotels and various things like that. So I kind of put that under the banner of hospitality, but it's really planes, trains, automobiles, rental cars, you name it. And so we've been very successful. I'll give you one example. A woman in another state was going to she just survived breast cancer. She wanted to celebrate. She was going to take her family. There were 8 people that were going to the Caribbean, but she couldn't fly because it was hard to get in and out of countries when COVID was, rampant. And so she had put down $30,000 deposit, but she still had to pay more when she arrived. Long story is they wouldn't give her money back. I went to the president of the resort where they were staying. I got to this woman and a multi-billion-dollar company and told her the story about this woman, how she survived cancer, brought her into the personal aspect of this, and they wrote a check.
So it seems like one of the techniques that you've used is try to go right to the top.
Always.
And also bring a personal touch.
Yeah, it's really, it's very interesting when you add the human interest into it. People do want to help people, even if people appear in the beginning gruff or whatever. When they really understand, it's not just losing a client, although nobody wants to lose customers, but when you really sort of bring that personal touch, as you mentioned, or human interest piece into the facts, it changes. And I think if communicated properly, that's how we. And so what's also exciting about that is you then have a contact forever. So let's say the airlines, we got back, a lot of people got vouchers, but a lot of senior people were like, we need the money. So we turned those vouchers into cash. So once you have a connection at a major airline, you have that connection forever, unless they get promoted or moved or whatever. So it's building that database and relationships. It's more than just names and numbers. We built relationships that we continue to use as we grow the company.
So a newest area that you've added is cybersecurity.
Yep.
And does that work well with all the other areas?
It's very unique and different. And the way I got into it was you always get calls. There was an IT owner who was working with a client, and he suggested, he'd read about me or heard me on a TV or something, and basically said, try Nancy. This gentleman lost several $100,000. He had a 30-year-old Massachusetts business, family-owned business, very successful. And in the middle of the night, someone came and wiped out his account with PayPal, as it were. And PayPal is an interesting company because it's a fine company. It's a multi-billion-dollar company, but you can't really talk to people. It's pretty automated, like chat bots and things, so it's like, how do you help this gentleman? But anyway, when he mentioned the whole issue to me, I said, sounds criminal, and I don't do criminal, but never say never. Let me look into it. And I looked into it, and we got him all his money back. Got him all every single dollar. And that set me down that path. And what it did is we brought in, and we continued to bring in experts. Experts help me understand areas. So we brought in a police lieutenant, actually from the Plymouth Police Force, retired. We brought in 2 FBI retired agents. We're actually adding another individual. He's actually a legal gentleman, but he's been involved with the FBI, not working for them, but doing cases for many, many years. So as we expand, people hear about us and they want to help. They want to help people. And so they come on board as advisors and helpers. But cyber, it's really, the biggest challenge today is there's no regulations around scams. And a lot of the financial institutions, of which I deal with all the majors, top 7, they tend to want to run away and many times try to put the blame on the individual, which is sad. But, we, through our, again, experience and expertise and knowledge, we try to do whatever we can. Example, there was a woman here in one of the suburbs of Boston, and she got scammed, and it was one of the major 7, and she was on a fixed income. She was 82 years old. I was talking to a women's group. She was in that audience. She saved my card. This happened after that. She called me up one day. She said, I know I got scammed. I used my credit card. And in the end, we got her back $6,000, which for her meant the world.
Right.
So cyber, I mean, that in of itself could be an amazing company. I mean, huge. So
if you were to now summarize problems solved with all these various areas,
yep.
How would you describe this as the solutions experts?
So, yeah, we do, as I mentioned earlier, we bring in people, whether it's insurance. I've just given you some examples of cyber vendors. We bring people who've been in the retail arena. We have some amazing people, and they can be anywhere. They can be in California. It's a virtual world. And we try to attract people. Maybe you're getting, some individuals are getting close to retirement, but they have all these skills. They might only want to work a couple hours a week. They can solve problems. Others want to do it on a more full-time basis. But the bottom line is all of these areas need those experts, and we're able to build that cache of people that are just so knowledgeable, skillful, and all you need is a computer, because you can Zoom with anybody or today, or a phone. And if you don't use a computer, it doesn't matter. And you don't have to go. You don't have to go to a meeting. You can just do it all remotely, just like telehealth as an example. So it's a whole new world. And I think we're helping to, my father, which is one of the reasons I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. My dad never went to college. I started a company with $100 in Ohio. And he was around when a contract was a handshake. And he instilled in me helping people, taking leadership roles in organizations, being involved in the community. And so I thank my parents very much for where I am today. And when you leave this world, you want to really make a mark. And we're just helping so many people. I'm passionate about it.
So you mentioned golf. What else do you like to do in your free time?
Well, I have a great family. So I travel to Ohio to see my son, and I have 2 grandchildren. One of them just finished 2 years of med school. And as I mentioned, at Miami of Ohio, we have a young man who's a junior. I'm on a lot of committees and things, not as much as what I used to be. I joined this group called Provisors. One of the things that's made our company, I think, so well known is basically our network is referrals. So whether you're a CPA, wealth advisor, financial advisor, realtor, lawyer, it's probably our best source of referrals around the country. That's really another interest of mine, because it dovetails into what we are trying to accomplish.
Sure.
And we're helping them as well, because people come to me and they go, can you help me? I have a legal issue, or I have a health issue. And then all of a sudden you could, get other people involved that are the experts.
If someone just joined us, what would be the one takeaway you'd want people to have from this?
I think people sometimes are afraid to pick up the phone, and they're, especially we just talked about cybersecurity, they don't want to admit something. It's not their fault, but they feel guilty. So I think just be open, and we're very easy to get a hold of. We're always picking up the phone immediately, or we have a system that captures a call. People are called back within, less than an hour. And there's help out there if people are aware of our company.
Great. Nancy Muckle, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been my pleasure.
This completes our interview with Nancy Muckle. I would like to just take a moment also for those of you viewing to remind everyone that Plymouth still has a representative town meeting. We meet on the first Saturday in April and the third Saturday in October. And as Plymouth Town Moderator, I do appoint the Advisory and Finance Committee. And for those of you who are watching, if you know of anyone, or if you're interested in perhaps volunteering to serve on the Advisory and Finance Committee, you can contact me at 508-746-1464 or email me at fst@plymouthlaw.com. Again, a thank you to all the people here at the local scene, especially to Melissa Matinzi, who's worked closely with me to plan and schedule these presentations. For Plymouth Profiles, thank you for joining us. Good day.
Bye.